Hi guys and gals, this is Vic Moss with Drone U, and I'm going to put together a little preliminary review of Skylum's new software specifically for drone photos called AirMagic. I'm going to do things slightly different here in that I'm going to give you the conclusion before I get into the actual meat and potatoes of the software. And I'll just say right up front, I'm not a real big fan of this software. But then again, Skylum probably didn't put this out for people like me who really want the full control of their photography. They want to be able to shoot in RAW. They want to be able to go ahead and just do all the things that I do with an image. This is more geared towards and more targeted towards people who, let's say real estate photographers who just really want to pump out the photography as quick as they can, and good enough is good enough. I don't mean to pick on real estate, but that's just sort of how it works in the real estate photography area. You don't need to put the time and effort I put into the photography on my end for residential or even some commercial real estate gigs, because it's just not, it just doesn't make sense to money-wise and time-wise. The budget's not there for you to spend 15 or 20 minutes on an image to really make it sing. I think in instances like that, AirMagic might be good. Right out of the box with what I've got, I'm going to say it's not yet. But again, this is a beta version. So odds are that, well, we'll get into the meat and potatoes part of things here in just a bit. But odds are once they get a few more of the styles set up, and of the styles you can either buy or get. I'm not sure how they're going to work that just yet, but I think once they get that set up a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, a little bit crisper, and get some of the lens distortion issues on some of the certain drones put into the software, then I would say it might work for them. But I'm going to hold judgment on that just for now. As is, I really don't see it as that good of a software, but again, it's beta. And it does have the distortion in some things, like if I'm shooting, I did some stuff with an Inspire image on the X5 with the 25mm Olympus, and it took care of the distortion there. I put my P4P up, and obviously I'm shooting RAW and all of this. I put my P4P up. It took care of the distortion there. But when it came to the Mavic 2 Pro, it didn't. So that needs to be fixed, especially in RAW on the M2P. It's got such distortion in it, as a lot of people realized when they first started shooting it, especially in some of the video. But it needs to be taken care of before I would consider this a successful software, simply because the whole point behind the AI, behind the artificial intelligence of the software, is to make it a drag and drop and export software. And it's not there yet for the Mavics. And I also don't think it's there quite yet for some of the images. I think most of the images really is it's just too contrasty in color, and it's just a little bit too much saturation. But again, we'll get into that here in just a bit. So again, my conclusion before we even get started here is it's just not ready yet. It's definitely not for people who want a lot of control in their software, in their editing, and in their processing. But I think it will be a really good niche software for some people once they get a few things worked out. Okay, so before we get into it again, let's talk a little bit about the pros. I like how it installs incredibly easy. At least it does on the Mac. I'm assuming it's probably just as simple on a PC. And just how you get the images into the software too is pretty nice. You've got a couple different options. You can hit open and then just navigate to where you want to pull the imagery from. And I've got some DNGs sitting here, and you can figure out which ones you want, stuff like that. So if you've got them labeled correctly, then that works pretty well. But what I think I like to do most, I'm going to slide this over here. I like to just pull up Bridge and use it in all kinds of different situations. I'll just slide it back over here a little bit. Then here's my DNGs I'm going to work with here. I've got them set up in an AirMagic folder, and just the different DNGs. So you can pull them over. You just literally click and drag. Let's do something with, let's pull up my mid image here from Folly Beach. So you can literally just drag it right over there, and there it goes. So you can click over here. It does all kinds of little funny things here. I'll get into what these little lines are doing here in just a bit. But as you can see, then it gives you some pretty good option. It works pretty well, just like a lot of the Skylum. You have your before and after slider, but we'll get into that here in just a bit. Another thing I really like about it is your export. You literally click export here, disk, email, SmugMug. I'm not sure why they have SmugMug, but they also give the options of adding and removing certain things from this the screen right here. So we'll go to disk, and then we have where we want to put it, what we want to call it. We can just go ahead and call it happy here. I've set up some of my advanced settings already, so my default is actually in a non-compressed TIFF format. You have to change that, but you can go in here to advanced settings, which is what we'll do here real quick. And you can save to, if you can have a default. I like my save as folder. If you've seen any of my other videos, I do have my save as folder. I use it a lot, so we're going to set that as my default, so it goes there with that. The naming is just going to be none, really, how I'm going to have it set up, because I want to be able to name each one separately. I've got it set up in TIFF, none, so there's absolutely no compression at all, and I like to work in 16-bit when I'm processing. Adobe RGB, you've got 3 options here. You can go sRGB, Adobe RGB, ProPhoto, RGB, all those different things, and you can also resize it. One thing I wish I had here, now when I'm processing my stuff in Capture One, I have another recipe set up for that, which is very similar, 16-bit TIFF, all this stuff, no compression, any of that. But I like to have, I do it 125% for pretty much all of my drone imagery. It just gives me a nicer image, that kind of stuff. But you can set it up if you want a certain long, how many pixels you want here on the long edge, on the short edge. You can have certain dimensions. You can click don't enlarge. So I'm just going to keep it down here as original. But see, I already have this set up as default, so I just click default. And then I hit continue, and it's going to set it all up, and it sets this up here. And one thing here, I like to kind of give you some tips and facts here. It's just kind of fun. I've read through some of them are funny, some of them are actually a good idea. Histogram, hey, that's an awesome idea. But it just gives you, it's processing it out. So that works pretty well. I like the way it's working. I like that aspect of it, and I think once we get some of the little issues worked out, I think in the grand scheme of things when it comes to processing images quickly, especially with your default settings that you can set up, this will work pretty well. It just needs a little bit more coming out. So hit reveal in Finder, and it just kind of takes you where it is. Okay, it's in the Save As folder right here. It was like, whoops, where did it go? I guess, oh, that's right. I did it the other way. So we'll hit back here, reveal in Finder, and it just takes you back to the air map, and here it is right here. So it's a 16-bit TIFF file. So I obviously hit the wrong button somewhere because I didn't go to the save button, save as button. So, but that's really one of the things I really like about it. Just quickly how quickly it works. You hit done, you click done here, and it goes back to this again. So there are some really good things about it, and some really not so good things about it. In here, we can go ahead and get into the not so good things, and especially in this particular image. It's a really good image to show some of the places it falls short. This is from my Mavic 2 Pro, and I shot this at Folly Beach back in January when we were there for a Drone U mapping course. And it's the Mavic 2, like I said, and you've got this distortion right here. Now it gives you the option up here in setting, automatic lens correction, and here it's Command L, which is probably Option L in the PC, I believe, or Control L. But anyway, so Command L, and it resets it. And again, it didn't change anything. So it's just not working on the Mavic 2 Pro. So I hit Command L again, and we'll my little marker right here, you can see where it doesn't do anything. So I hit Command L again. Now you just saw it put it lens correction, and it didn't change anything. So that will change. It really will. Like I said, it works with the P4P and the Inspire, the X5. But if you'll notice here, and this maybe it's just a personal feeling on mine, but if you go back and forth here, you especially watch right here, it's really kind of blasting the color contrast in here. And what I mean by that is if you look at the shadows, they're going really blue, and you look at the highlights, they're going really yellow. So look at this house right here. You can really see it. Now, true, it's a yellow house, so it might be accentuated there, but your shadows, this roof is not blue. It's a gray roof, and it's really bumping it, making it blue. So somewhere in the algorithm, it's goofing that up, in my opinion. Now, let's look over here at the trees. It's doing some fantastic stuff in these trees over here. Now this is my mid exposure on this. This is my correct exposure according to the histogram. And if you notice, the trees are a little dark here, which is fine. That's just how it works. But it does some spectacular stuff over here in the trees. So that it does do well. But the other stuff here, it's not ready for me. That's probably not a fair statement. It's not something I would want. We need to bump down the contrast with the color and that kind of thing, which would really help a lot. Now, one thing you can do, let's slide it all over here, all the way over here, so you have a good after. One thing they do have is right here, you click on the little paintbrush, and you can change how much it's going on here. So the trouble is it changes everything overall. So let's say you want to get down here to where the color contrast isn't so bad. That's kind of looks a little bit nicer, but the overall contrast is also down a little bit. And the trees over here don't look as good. So the overall, to me, if you're doing the overall effect, it doesn't work for me. But again, you have to do just different settings on that. So let's click that. I'm sorry, different styles. So let's click some styles. It comes with these 5 here. And again, maybe it's just the beta. I'll do another review once we get a actual full working software in there. But you can change it. They've got a little Chinook thing. And what I'll do is I'll process these out into different ones. And you've got a cinematic, which it kind of changes it. It actually makes it even more so. But, it's a nice cinematic look if you're into that look. Emotional. I think they're just kind of beta styles that are just going to make it, just something to play with for now. Sandstorm. That one's kind of a little flatter. Really, actually, a lot flatter, a lot duller. And then the final one here is Zephyr, which comes with it. And that one is not horrible. It's one of the better ones as far as color contrast goes. So that one, of all the ones that come with it, I could probably live with, which gives me hope that they'll actually have a little bit better style that you can download later. So that's kind of a real quick synopsis of the overall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to process a different image too as well and show you what it looks like in a P4P. Before we get into the P4P and some of the corrections it does, I want to show you how it handles a few different types of scenarios here. So what I'm going to do is, you can also do batch processing in this, which you can look into. It's not something I do really ever. I just never batch process anything. And that's just how it is. I guess I probably could have in this particular shoot right here for the Albuquerque skyline. But it's just not something I would really do under normal circumstances. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple different things. First of all, let's show you how it handles dark versus light. Well, again, we'll go back up here. Let's do this one. This is a dark image right here. If we pull it over, it's a very dark image. We shot this with we shot this for the night class, but I just thought it'd be good to use this as well, or use for this as well. So we'll pull AirMagic over here, drag this in, and what it's going to do. These little lines kind of aggravate me because if they didn't have these playing around, I think it would process out quicker. But that's just me. If you'll notice, in this is shot daylight balance, so it's probably going to be a little cool anyway. But the AI is seeing this as a really, really super cool image, and that really I do not like at all. But let's pull the style up. We'll go back here to the Zephyr. And even with the Zephyr, it's still kind of blue. So it needs, one of the styles needs to be a night style or something along those lines that really just doesn't turn it so stinking cool, even with the Zephyr. And it's not Zephyr, I'm sorry, what is that? Sandstorm. It's still a little cool. It's a lot better, but it's still kind of cool. If you notice the sky, that's not as cool as the other ones, but the parking lot still is cool. So I'm going to, in a darker shot like this, it doesn't handle it very well. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to start over, which is kind of nice. You hit that, and that gives you some options. Let's pull up. Let's go actually again with this image here. This is the darker image. Actually, before I get into that, I want to show you what it's going to do with this particular image here. So let's take this image right here and drag it in. Go back over here. Let it do its thing. Again, the little white lines are a little aggravating, but that's just life. In a dark image like this, again, it's just really, I don't like how it's handling the color. This was basically a fairly neutral color. Again, I shot daylight, but this is all LED, so it should not really be this. You know, you got a really bright orange here, you got some green there, and you got a whole bunch of orangey green yuckiness going on. So I'm just really not happy with that at all. And that's in its default. So again, you go back in here into the Zephyr. It's not horrible. It's a lot better, but still, it's not great color. Don't like the color. And again, since this is the Mavic, it's just, you know, the distortion's not there. The distortion removal is not there yet. So let's get rid of this again. I'll show you a different one. Show you how. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. Sorry. Let's get rid of that. Nope. Start over. Let's take these two images here. This is pretty much the same image. This is a 5-shot AEB out of the Mavic. So we've got the darkest one here. Let's pull this over. You can kind of see what it's doing. Got the darkest one here and the lightest one here. The reason I want to show you this is exposure is going to be pretty important as far as what it does. Pull Magic over here just a little bit. Let's take both of these and stick them in there. And this is kind of nice when you're doing batch processing, is pull this one up, double click it, and it does go ahead and do all the, you know, everything you're trying to do to it. Again, much smaller than I'd like it to see, so it'll give it here just a couple more seconds to come up, and it should come up here really quick like. But what I want you to see, or what I want you to look at between these two images, is how it handles the highlights. Now this particular one, if you go back here, the highlight's not blown. There really are no blown highlights in here. I mean, if you know, that's probably technically blown, that's probably technically blown, that's probably technically blown. But overall, there's still some fairly decent detail. I love how it handles the sky. I think it's done a really nice job of taking a fairly dramatic sky in RAW and really making it pump. So that's something I really like about it. Again, there's distortions in it because it doesn't have the distortion removal for the Mavic yet. But it definitely, the color again is just warmed up too much, or it's just too much of a color contrast. You know, you've got a little blue here and you got some warmth there. But particularly we want to watch the sky, or the highlight here. So if you look here at the Sketcher sign, in the underexposed one, it handles it pretty well. So let's get rid of that. And let's go to this guy right here. So we're going to double click that. It's trying to find, it tried to put the lens correction in there, but since it doesn't know what the Mavic 2 is doing, you know, it doesn't know what the lens profile for the Mavic is, it doesn't know what to do. So again, this is the lightest of the image. It's an overexposed image. But what it's trying to do, and this is what I mean when you have to be careful with your exposures, is it's trying to take, look at the Sketcher saying, oh man, I wish I could blow this up. Double click on it, you just can't blow it up. We'll go back up here, let's see, it's not giving me a zoom option. But it's causing what I call a muddy highlight. You know, it just, the highlight isn't crisp anymore, it's just kind of ugly looking, and it's also doing it up here in the sky. The sky is really muddy, really flat. It's handling the shadows fairly decently, but I would hope it would in an overexposed image. And it's actually a little bit funny here. If you watch this car, it's trying to put a little bit of lens correction in there, but not much. Just not enough, obviously, because you still got that major distortion on the horizon line. So you want to be careful. You want to make sure you're using the right exposure. The too dark is, you know, if you're going to error on the dark side, we'll get rid of that. You know, error back over here. Just simply because you're better off pulling shadow highlights, or you're shadow detail than highlight detail. It just doesn't work, even in this. And if I process it out, it's supposed to handle the noise from the shadow pretty well. So I'll go ahead and export that out. We'll export it to the disk. Night ops, we'll go ahead and go in advanced settings and hit default, which is, we'll go ahead and do the browser. I want to go back into save as, save, and then continue. And then it's going to go ahead and do that. And let's see if it actually puts it in the Save As folder this time like it's supposed to. And a few more little hints and tips and facts, it says, which is kind of nice. Kind of gives you a little bit of an education as you're sitting there watching your screen not do anything, since it's taken a little while to do that. And there we go. So we're done here. And it goes back to that. So let's go back up here. Let's go into my Save As. See if it pulled it up actually in the Save As this time, if I did it the right way. So that's under my computer, under my hard drive, users, pictures, and then Save As. Let's see if it works. Save As. there it is. Actually, so I did it right this time. So let's go ahead and double click that and open up in Photoshop and pull it up 100%. And we can check and see what the grain looks like, or noise, I guess, technically, since it's not film. So, go up to 100% here. And it does all right. Just looking at it real briefly, it's kind of grainy. It's kind of noisy here in the highlight and the mid-tone, the shadow tones. So I would say overall, just based on this image, it's probably not doing a great job as far as taking care of the grain. This isn't too bad. The sky grain actually looks pretty good. It's kind of nice and sharp right there. Part of that is the Mavic sensor, that 1-inch sensor. That's not looking too terribly blown out, which is kind of nice. A little blue, but that's just how it is. So that's not too bad. So we'll go ahead and quit Photoshop. And we'll go ahead and move this guy over here to back over here again. So overall, with the with particular AirMagic, let's get rid of that. Say goodbye. You need to make sure your exposure is going to be pretty good. So this, try to use your mid exposure, and if you're a little unsure of things, maybe go down 2/3, which is the DJI. Instead of a stop on the AEBs, it's 2/3, which I wish they'd fix, but that's not what this is about. So anyway, that's what this is. Now we'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and go into the P4P. Oh, one more quick thing, while I'm thinking about it here. I don't want to do that just yet. So we're going to open more. I want to show you what it does with a very poorly underexposed image. Not underexposed, I'm sorry, very flat light image. So let's go back into here. Where am I? On the desktop, AirMagic, DNGs. So this shot right, where am I? Right here. I wanted to pull that image up and show you what it does. I didn't want to open more, but that's okay, it still works. We're going to analyze this here. And this is a very, very flat, while it's working on that, I'll show you what it looks like. It's a very flat scene because of just really crappy light. It's really boring light. So this is a very boring image. We shot it this way on purpose for an editing video we did, but it's very boring, very flat, very ugly light. And look what it does here. Now this actually is very nice. I will give it that. I wish I could make it bigger. And maybe it will, and maybe it will when it's not in beta. But if you look here, look what it's doing. There's the flat image. But I've got that flat image. This is actually a really usable image in Photoshop. I mean, I'm sorry, for a realtor. Obviously the house is light and it's centered, and that's kind of the object. But you wouldn't have to do too much to this to make a real estate agent fairly happy with the image. But it's shot a little flat, it's shot a little dark, but it's been able to do that with just that flat image. So there are certainly times when it works, and that is the default. I mean, if you want to, let's pull this up in cinematic, see what it looks like, because that's going to make things bump a little bit more. And so there you go. That could even be, that could even be a little bit nicer. It's got a little bit better contrast. It's more contrasty. So some of this, the cinematic style for a very flat light image works pretty well. So there are some things I do like about it. But again, without the Mavic, so the distortion isn't taken care of in here. But I did want to show you this as well. As I was planning this, I forgot about that one. So it's not bad in this. It might be a little bit over saturated, and you've got the blues. The shadows are still a little blue, so you got a blue sky, you got blue roof here, and blues in the shadows. But this is really blue back up here, so really cool shadowing. But overall, this is a very, very usable image for a realtor. If that's what they wanted to do, you only had a certain time to shoot, and here you go. This is what you had to shoot with, and you had to deal with that. Pop that into AirMagic, and it might work real well for you. So that's that, and hopefully that'll work for you in situations like that. But now we'll move on to the P4P and actual distortion removal. Okay, so on this one, I'm going to go ahead and work with a P4P image. It's a raw image I just went out and shot a little bit ago. Again, I like to, you can hit the open, and then, it'll pull up the little thumbnails. But I like to work with what I've got working here. So I want to know what image I've got that I want to pull from. So we're going to go ahead and go into Bridge here. We'll pull up my P4P images. We'll pull up the mid one, which is this one right here. And I kept the horizon right smack dab in the middle on this one. Let's pull this over here. I'm going to make that go away for now. So if you notice now, this is a P4P. I kept like I said, I kept the horizon right in the middle, so you can tell how much distortion is in the image. If I scroll back and forth, you can see how much is taken out on the edges. Like watch this little white house right here. You can tell it kind of really stretches it out. If you look at the center where the P4P's got that kind of center weirdness, it takes it out. And then again over here, it's also doing the same thing. So this is what it does on the P4P. It does work with that. If you want to see what the difference is, Command L. Like let's say again, watch this little yellow house right here. Command L, and then that is getting rid of the distortion. Now it still does the rest of the you know, the corrections, the color corrections, contrast corrections, that kind of thing, but it's getting rid of the distortion. So let's put the lens distortion back in there, and it kind of shows you what's going on here. Now, since this has the lens correction in it, one of the nice things about it here, when you're trying to figure out how much to put in, how much of the correction to put in, it does not change the lens correction. All it's changing is the color and the contrast correction that the AI has determined is best for this particular scene. So we'll click that back out of there again, and again I do not have the lens correction in here, so I'm going to put it in there. So Command L. So now it's back in there again. Now another thing I wish this had is this is as big as you can move it around, but you can't make it any bigger. You can make it smaller, but you can't make it any bigger than that. When I'm trying to decide what I want an image to look like, I like to be able to zoom in at 100%. Like let's say I wanted to zoom in at 100%. This is just out over my house basically, and that's downtown Denver. Some of the leftovers from our little storm we had Wednesday. I would like to be able to, like, let's say double click it and come into 100% and see what it looks like down here, because that's what the image is going to look like. Someone's going to be looking at it 100%. I want to be able to see exactly what it's doing for in the processing engine. So I can't, and that's a little frustrating to me. Now another thing that frustrates me is it's kind of hazy today here in Denver, just simply because of all the storm we had and everything that's on the ground. The gradation between the haze and the actual blue sky is not too bad here. It's very nice and smooth in the unprocessed image. But you go in here and you get a little bit of banding going on. So hopefully that's something they'll work out. And again, this is the default setting, so you would think it would be the least affected of them. But you've got the, you can see a little bit of a green band right here. Hopefully you can see that. But then it goes off into the darker blue up here, which is fine. And I think that's the AI sky enhancement that Skylum has. They do have it in their Luminar, which I really like. But for some reason, this is not working very well in this thing. Again, you've got the nice gradation from, the hazy, little bit of hazy sky up there up to the dark blue. But in its effort to get rid of haze, I think it went a little too far and it got all this stuff going on here. So in a P4P image, I'm just not real happy with it. So if we go though to, let's try the Zephyr style, which is the style I kind of like, it's not as pronounced. You still have a little bit of the green here, but it's not as pronounced as it was. And we go over here and we start pulling all this back down. Pull it all the way up and you still get a little bit of the green again. But if you start pulling it back down, it does seem to go away, and you don't get that really high contrast in the color. A little bit here, you can really see the blue coming out in the shade, in the shadow on the snow, here and here. You can see it more so, obviously, if you can go over 100%. But you just can't go over 100%. So, well, let's see if we hit zoom. Maybe I'm wrong here. Nope, that's just not going to do it. So, anyway, those are my thoughts on the current iteration of the Skylum AirMagic. I think it has a lot of potential, but I don't think it's there yet. It releases here, I think, in 5 days. There will be a link below that will allow you to pre-order it. I am an affiliate, so it will be an affiliate link. But being an affiliate really doesn't change my feeling one way or another. I'm going to tell you what I think about it. I think it has a lot of potential. I just think it's not quite there yet for the market that doesn't want to do a lot of work on their imagery. I think that's probably it's probably their target audience, and considering how it runs, that would be my guess. So that's where we're at. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them below, and I'll see if I can get back to you. Thank you much. Again, this is Vic Moss with Drone U. Bye-bye.